Hi, I'm Daniel Arendilger of Roughly Drafted Magazine, and this is the video segment number 4 of 10 Myths of iPad. This is looking at people who think that the iPad was overhyped and underdelivered. Most of the people that didn't really see the point of the iPad didn't see the iPad. But even some of those, many of those, in fact, it seems like almost all of those media people who were in attendance at the iPad event last week came away thinking that the iPad was overhyped and underdelivered. It's interesting that they would say that because they didn't say that about any of the other products that were overhyped and underdelivered. You have Michael Arrington's Crunch Pad. Michael Arrington hyped the fuck out of it, suggesting that it was the way things would be in the future. Turns out he couldn't even get it finished. Not only could he not meet the price and the specs and the features that he wanted to do, but even his dream of having kind of this open source technology sharing thing kind of was taken away from him, and he was so mad he sued the company that actually did the work. What about other open source projects? XO, was supposed to be a $100 laptop for developing countries. Turned out to be at least twice as much as that, and couldn't hardly barely do anything. And it rejected, Steve Jobs offered to put Mac OS X on it for them, and they said, no, we want GPL all across the board. We want it all to be like Linux, completely open so that kids in developing countries could rewrite the kernel. And it turned out it failed so badly that they were ready to license Microsoft's platform, which is not open on any level, right? In terms of being able technology sharing and being able to modify it. Palm's Folio, remember that? They came out with it, showed it was going to be this great new way to harness. It was running Linux. It was supposed to be kind of a little laptop thing. They couldn't even get it to market. They decided to cancel it beforehand. It was just too out of control project. Microsoft's Courier. Microsoft came out with pictures of a device that looked like kind of a tablet, had a stylus for writing on one side, the other side was supposed to be somewhat touch oriented or whatever. Complete pipe dream. Doesn't even suggest what price it might be at. It's never going to get delivered. Microsoft came out at CES this year with HP's Slate computer, which was basically a tablet running a web browser, and Windows 7. And wow, isn't Windows Vista 7, isn't that just something that consumers are clamoring for? Because does it offer anything that is good on a tablet computer? The latest one is from Google. They're coming out with this Chrome OS Google version of the iPad. And pundits are already jumping all over it saying, oh, this is an iPad killer. All it does is browse the web. It doesn't have any of the features of the iPad. It doesn't present any kind of clever user interface. That's something we haven't seen before. It isn't familiar to millions of people. Look at how Apple hyped the iPad. It didn't. Apple executives didn't say anything about it. In fact, they were super quiet up to the point where they gave their demonstration. Even days before, they had a perfect setting to say, hey, we expect to make a lot of money on this, even if we're not going to show you the details. They totally they wouldn't even answer the question of whether their expectations of how much they were going to sell was even factored into their prices, factored into their guidance for investors. So Apple really underhyped this. If anything, Apple set expectations that it would cost twice as much, and that wouldn't do that much. I came to the event thinking, what is Apple possibly going to do to make the tablet attractive to consumers at a price point of, I was expecting $700 or $800. How is it going to attract people to that? That's a product that has never taken off before. So anyone who says that the iPad is overhyped and underdelivered is so far out of reality and compared to anything else, any other product that's come out recently. And if readers, if you can suggest any ideas, if I'm selectively forgetting something, if there's any sort of tablet device that was delivered and with less hype and more delivery at the end, please let me know, because I couldn't think of any example. Meanwhile, the critics have been brutal on this. And by critics, I mean people who usually gush over any kind of technology. The DS XL, which is the same thing with a slightly bigger screen. Instead of being 3.5 inches, it's 4.5 inches or something. Same resolution. It's a bigger DS. Remember, this is the same company that ridiculed the iPad as being a bigger iPod Touch. It's like, really? Is that your definition of bigger? Because it isn't just a bigger screen with the same resolution. It's a much larger resolution screen that's completely set to a totally different user environment. It has an incredible range of new capabilities in it, obviously. just because you can put both hands on the thing instead of a small iPod Touch. The kind of ridiculous talk about the iPad is so over the top. It's just blowing my mind. John Stokes came up with a table of features that he thought were important in mobile devices, and checked off what the iPad delivers, what today's iPhones deliver, or today's smartphones deliver, and then also what other tablets that are expected this year are expected to deliver. The problem with his checklist is that it abstracts very different things together. So one of the things was whether it runs Office apps. And I'm sorry, but if you're comparing the iPad's iWork multi-touch Office suite with Pocket Office apps on Windows Mobile, or Documents to Go on a Palm OS device, I mean, really, what? Maybe running Google's web-based docs on an Android pad? I mean, come on. This is ridiculous. One of the things that Dr. Ernie said about it, he talked about reducing features to a series of kind of checklist broad categories. It's kind of like reducing the experience of eating chocolate to a series of chemicals that you're putting in your mouth. So I thought that was pretty clever. He also made a comment I saw in his Twitter feed about all the hate on the iPad. It's kind of reminiscent of Yoda's comment that hate comes from fear. Clearly, there's a lot of fear here about Apple and its ability to revolutionize this, because a lot of people are really hurt about having to give credit Apple for having to credit Apple ever for anything. For example, if you look at Engadget's review, they lined up several editors. There were like a dozen editors that were all talking about it. So it wasn't just one person's opinion. Some websites will have different people on, they'll each kind of give a different perspective. But pretty much across the board, everyone used words like unimpressive, a huge letdown. It was interesting in certain ways, but certainly nothing groundbreaking. It's like, what would need to break the ground for you people? Because the kind of things that they're excited about in other categories, for example, the Zune HD, they talked about, just were blown away by the fact that it had this OLED display that Microsoft had to demonstrate in a candlelit room. That's not groundbreaking. That's something you can't use outside. It's just so ridiculous. It's just off the hook. A lot of people have been upset about, and this is going to be another myth article, but that it doesn't run Mac OS X. And it's like, really? You're upset that it's running the iPhone OS because the iPhone OS isn't sophisticated enough? Should it be like Microsoft, and Apple should have like multiple different kernels running on their different products, whether it's Windows CE or Windows XP or Vista 7, that are all different enough to where you're just wondering what their strategy really is? Or perhaps Google, they have the same Linux kernel under both Chrome OS and Android, but the user interface and the interface for developers, the API, is so dramatically different. They're completely different products. They're completely targeted at different sorts of things. There's enough overlap to be confusing, but not enough overlap to that if you're familiar with an Android device, you couldn't move to a Chrome OS device. It's not the same thing at all. One is web-based, the other is basically a modified Java. And there's no similarity in the operating environment or in the development tools or really anything. Mark Stevens, who writes as Robert X. Cringely, or I. Cringely, tried to compare the iPad to the Segway. What comparison is there? Is it held up by laws that you can't ride it on the sidewalk so that no one's going to need it? Is it crazy expensive? Is it something that looks kind of stupid? So we're on myth 4 of the 10 myths of iPad. Come back tomorrow and watch the next one. Thanks for watching, and thank you for your feedback and suggestions. We'll try to put some of that into use. And be sure to check out the Roughly Drafted page on Facebook if you're on Facebook. It's not your typical comment section with a bunch of kids and grumpy old men being frustrated. It's a bunch of smart people, and they're saying like intelligent things and putting in citations to other articles. And so come and share your own ideas and tweet this around and be interesting. All right, thanks.